Has anyone else ever played that old game, Yu-Gi-Oh! GX Duel Academy? It was always my favorite game of the series, even though most people who played it seemed to hate it. The whole point of the game was to move around the map of the main island of the game, featuring the Duel Academy and its surroundings, dueling others in order to meet certain requirements to raise your class rank to King of Games. It was actually a bit challenging when it came to the timed puzzles, and some of the events that took place were kind of entertaining. Having long since lost my official cartridge of the game, as well as the Game Boy I played it on, I instead downloaded it as a ROM onto my old smartphone, since the service on it was dead anyway and I figured I might as well make something useful out of it. I'm not sure why, but the idea of having this game in my pocket to pass the time was a highly amusing one. I spent countless hours playing, and long after I attained the legendary King of Games rank, I kept playing, if only to pass the time in a more entertaining way than solitaire. As you play, the game keeps track of your stats for you, how many times you've won, lost, and things like that. As my win count climbed closer to 10,000, I wondered how high I'd have to go before the whole counter resets. Maybe I'd break the game, or maybe unlock something new. Needless to say, the thought intrigued me. After some time, I finally found myself at that point. I had 9,999 wins, and as it was Saturday night, in the game at least, I cast around the map looking for the final kill. I decided on the main douche of the game, Dr. Crowler. He's not much of a challenge, but his deck is about as annoying as he is, with that damn fairy box and bottomless shifting sand. After a few turns, his life points fell to 0 and I won. I got my usual prize money, which at this point was useless, having gotten every card in the game, and my character was locked into my dorm room, which is normal at night. I checked my win count, and to my surprise, it did not read 10,000, but 4 X's instead. I figured I must have broken the counter, so I made my character sleep. When the next day started, the first thing I noticed was that there was no music. I checked the phone volume, but it was turned up to the max. Shrugging this off, I looked around the map for someone to duel, but it was as though every sprite in the game was gone. This was unusual, but I figured it could happen. I tried to make my character sleep, but instead I got the dialogue, "I can't sleep yet." This got me excited, as this usually meant that something was going to happen later in the game's day. So I picked a random location and pressed A. The game told me no one was there and went back to the map, now later afternoon. Once again, the entire map was empty and still there was no music in the game. Oddly, the game's sound effects would still play normally. Since the map was still empty, I went back to the dorm room on a whim and tried to sleep again. Once again, I got the "I can't sleep yet" text, and went back to the map. I picked another random location, was once again told no one was there, and the map came back up, now night. And this time, though, the map had only one location: docks. This was by no means a unique situation. The map has a tendency to do this at other locations if you schedule a duel with some via in-game email. What made this strange was that besides the name of the location was the face of the infamous Shadow Duelist. He shows up a couple times in the game and ends up losing a couple decent cards if you beat him. This excited me, and since I couldn't go anywhere else on the map, I pressed A.
Welcome, player. Yes, you, the one playing this game, the one watching all this on the screen.
At this I laughed. The developers must have had a good chuckle when they broke the fourth wall like this.
You are to be commended on doing so well, on defeating so many. But perhaps you seek a greater challenge? Perhaps you like to make things a bit more interesting. Well, why don't we have a duel, right now? And to spice things up, let's make this a true shadow duel. You do know the rules of a shadow duel, right?
At this point, the game gave me two answers to choose from. I could either tell him, "Of course," or I could tell him, what? Since I didn't live under a rock, I chose "of course." No one played a Yu-Gi-Oh game without knowing what a shadow duel was. In the TV series, a shadow duel was a normal duel played with one difference. The loser's soul would be trapped in the Shadow Realm forever, a nightmarish place by all accounts.
Good. Then let us begin.
With that, the screen flashed white, then faded away to reveal a strange sight. We were still at the map area docks, but it looked like someone had used a photo negative of what it should really look like. The Shadow's duelist himself was normal, but everything else was chromatically inverted. This was a neat effect I wish they had used earlier in the game, but it gave everything a bit of an eerie appearance. After that, the usual coin flip commenced for the first turn. I lost. The game made me go second, which was a minor nuisance at best. As the game board appeared, I noticed that it, too, looked like a photo negative. The cards looked normal, though, for which I was grateful. As our 2 decks were shuffled and our 5 cards were dealt, I felt a light pressure on my neck and throat, almost as if there were a pair of hands just barely touching me. I swallowed, trying to get rid of the sensation, but it wouldn't go away. Annoyed, I turned my attention back to the game. 8,000 life points, 5 spell trap card zones, 5 monster zones, a graveyard, a fusion deck, the main deck, and a spot for cards removed from play. That was the game board, and this was my kingdom. Here within this game, I was God, and no amusing tricks would save this AI from a painful defeat. Or so I thought. It seemed like everything in the game was against me. First, the cards I had been dealt were decent play starters, which sounds good, but I'll explain why this was bad later. Second, the computer had thrown down a defense position monster, used Pot of Greed, and promptly filled all 5 of his spell and trap card zones. Knowing this game, they were all traps, which didn't bode well for me. The first thing I did after my draw phase was to use the effect of a card called Cyber Dragon, which let me special summon it to the field if my opponent already had a monster and I didn't. This was mistake number 1. As I finished summoning, he flipped a trap card, the Ring of Destruction. This card destroyed my monster and inflicted damage to both our life points equal to the destroyed monster's attack, which was 2100. A nasty blow by all accounts, but I suffered worse and still won. As my life points dropped, I swear I felt the pressure on my neck increase like someone was squeezing my throat. I could still breathe, but it was getting difficult, and as I clawed at my throat, all I succeeded in doing was scratching myself. Some crazy part of me knew that this had to be the game's fault, that somehow it was doing this to me. I managed to calm down, trying to ignore the irrational side of me that was still screaming that this game was evil. I had heard the creepypasta before, about possessed and haunted games and evil things happening, but they were just stories. No way they could be real. Right? Irregardless, this only gave me a new reason to kick this guy's ass as fast as possible, so I threw down an Insect Night monster, only to lose it to a card called Trap Hole. Figured that was coming, but I had an ace of my own. I've dropped 2 trap cards at the end of my turn. I won't bore you with the details, this AI countered my every move. I couldn't attack without losing an equal amount of life points, I couldn't defend without him punching through as though my defense didn't exist. And each time I took a hit, the pressure increased around my neck. Finally, the pressure reached the point of becoming out and out painful and I decided enough was enough. I would shut off the game and get myself checked out at the hospital. I hit the sleep button on my phone and the screen went dark. Gradually, the pressure faded as I got up and got to the car. By the time I had started the engine, the pressure was completely gone, but I wasn't going to take any chances on this happening again. After a brief, useful visit to the hospital, they made me wait an hour and a half before telling me nothing was wrong. I was both angry and insanely bored. Glancing at my phone, I picked it up and swiped it unlocked. The game started again, and so did the pressure. I saw the Shadow Duelist's face in the text box that read,
You didn't think it ended that easily, did you? You surprised me last time, but there's no getting away again.
I was officially freaking out, and I tried everything to shut it off. I hit the sleep button, I tried to shut down the program, I even pulled out the phone's battery. Not even that worked. I knew then that I would have to finish this. I put out all the stops, I unleashed card combos usually reserved for super quick wins, and for those opponents who truly need an ass kicking. It was during this that I learned that restoring my own LP would actually lessen the pressure around my neck, so I made a mental note to do this as much as possible. Even still, this AI fought me like the devil himself, countering my counters, slipping on my defenses, deliberately targeting cards that were most beneficial to me, and generally being a douche. It was then that my one true trump card emerged from my deck. Chaos Necromancer. A simple 1-star monster, the lowest of the low really, except for his life-saving effect. His original attack value is a whopping 0, but he gains 300 attack points for every monster in my card graveyard. And since this duel had lasted almost 40 turns, I had no fewer than 18 monsters in my graveyard. 18 times 300 equals 5,400. As far as I was concerned, it was the equivalent of a much-needed tactical nuke. With one single attack, I devastated his remaining life points, dropping them to 0, zilch, nada, nothing. Immediately, the lingering pressure around my neck intensified for a moment, squeezing like iron before fading away completely. Coughing, I glanced at the phone screen, just in time to see another text box from the Shadow Duelist. Once again, it was a plain sky blue box with his face on to one side and
No!
to the other. As I watched, the duelist's face seemed to melt, to fall apart as if he'd been splashed with acid. First his skin melted, sliding off his face in large liquid globs. Then the muscle beneath bubbled and dripped down out of sight in a red stream, leaving only a bleached white skull underneath, which crumbled away to dust. The whole scene had lasted only a moment, but it made me feel nauseous. Something about it seemed so real. After a long moment, the text box faded away and the usual win flashed on the screen. Instead of rewarding me with currency, the game just reset, and the intro started up again. I had enough for tonight, and simply closed the program, shut down the phone, crawled into bed. The next morning, I got up and took a shower to wash away all the fear sweat from last night. As I did, I noticed a huge bruise on my neck, like someone had tried to strangle me. Something told me that would be a very bad idea to go to work with this, so I called in sick. After my shower, I picked up the smartphone and turned it back on. After that, I just held it for a while, debating whether or not I should play the game again. Against my better judgment, I turned the game on, and saw to my horror that my win count went back to 9,999. I wondered if winning one more would start that whole nightmare over again. Do I dare try? As I finished writing this, I decided to give it one more shot. Wish me luck. And long after I attained the legendary King of Games rank, I kept playing, if only to pass the time in a more entertaining way than solitaire. The fuck's wrong with solitaire, homeboy? We were still at the map area docks, and a spot for cards removed from play. That was the game board, and this was my kingdom. Fucking Kaiba. Second, the computer had thrown down a defense position monster, used Pot of Greed, which